Oh, hey everybody, it's David Heatley here from Cycling Inform, and thanks for signing up for the webinar tonight. Tonight we've got our special guest speaker, Paul. Now, Paul is from Sierra Sports. He's been running his tour operation for quite a few years out of Spain, haven't you, Paul?
That's right, David. Thanks for inviting us tonight.
Fantastic. And Jodie's here, my beautiful wife is here to help us out. So tonight we're going to be talking about touring in Europe and, cycling tours and stuff. And we're just going to wait a couple of minutes while people are signing up. But while we're waiting, if you could just introduce yourself, let us know who you are and where you're calling in from. That'd be fantastic while we're just waiting for people to load up into the webinar tonight. So it's going to be great. We're going to have some, we've already got quite a few questions already that have been asked in the survey that was done prior to us obviously running this webinar, so that's fantastic. So we're going to kick off with those, and hopefully we'll cover off all your questions. So certainly if you've got any specific questions, please do ask them before the end of the webinar. So I'd really hate for you to get to the end of the webinar and go, oh, I really didn't learn anything. So certainly get yourself engaged. Hi Julia, how are you? Get yourself engaged and make sure that you do start asking those questions in the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. So fantastic. All right. Well, look, we've got people already loaded up. So let's get started. So the first question is from Dennis, and he says, and that's actually a question directed for me and Jodie. What's the best training to prepare for riding mountainous terrains and 100+ distances day after day for 7 days? So before I get into that, Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about the way that you structure tours and how that sort of works around, training load or tour load while they're out there on the bike?
It's definitely a great question, because when you sign up to do a tour, you've usually got 7 or 8 guided rides. So that consecutive days on the bike, you need to have some preparation for that. So a tour is not a race, so it's not that you need to have explosive speed or acceleration or this or that, but you need to have a good base, that's for sure, to get the most out of your tour and to really enjoy what's happening day after day. So usually the rides, you're riding anywhere from 25, 28 Ks an hour on the flats in a group, and then on the hills, which could be anywhere from an hour to 2 hour climbs each, you need to just do your own rhythm. And that's where having some good training structure behind, I guess, this type of things you guys help with can really assist our clients. So that's what's...
definitely. All right. So we generally find that, the first thing when you do get on the tour, one of the most important things is to make sure that, you don't go flat out on the first couple of days, that you actually pace yourself and take it easy on the first couple of days. And just that way you actually build yourself into some fitness while you're actually away on the tour. And I know we did a tour in Spain with you, Paul, and we certainly did that and just moved ourselves into, into some good fitness, which was great. But in the training leading up to it, it really depends on the tour. Most of the tours over in Europe are fairly hilly, so it means that when I'm certainly training my athletes, it's important that we get to these back-to-back days where we've got some decent training. So, for example, on the weekends, we make sure that we've got 2 good days with lots of climbing in that. And then during the week, focusing on a bit of hill climbing, specific, low cadence work on the home trainer or out on the road, and then making sure that we're getting some good vertical meters. And generally, I would expect a person to be doing sort of somewhere between 200 to 250 kilometers a week for probably 6 weeks leading up to an event like this, for any tour over in Europe. We've got some obviously fantastic programs in our, online training centre, but I want to talk more about the tours tonight, so we won't talk about that. Jodie, have you got any comments?
Yeah, I found leading into Paul's tour, the Tour of Spain this year that we did, once I had the goal and I booked the tour, it really motivated me to train. And like in my training schedule, I just kind of gradually built up. So, I'd start off riding 2 or 3 days straight, or, and then kind of built up to do about 7 days straight to kind of replicate what I was doing in the tour. So, and it kind of motivated me to go out and do the hills, and, included some really sharp kind of gradients as well as some soft gradients, because some of the climbs in Spain and France, the climbs are actually quite steep. In Italy they've used a lot more tarmac and the climbs are a bit gentler, but just get used to riding back to back, and once you've got the goal you will find yourself motivated to train, I think.
I mean, some people find they haven't got heaps of time as well for training. So I think those interval 45-minute sessions during the week are really valuable for me. I'm a cycling guide, but I don't have heaps of time myself to get out and do 5-6 hour rides. So topping myself up with a lot of those little interval type programs during the week and then doing your long ride on the weekend, like David suggested, is great. And I think some people get value out of getting up in the morning, doing a ride in the morning, even short, but then back it up in the afternoon and do another one just to trick that body and get some adaptation so that the tours, when they're day after day, your body responds and recovers, which is really useful.
I don't know. For someone that doesn't spend a lot of time training, Paul, you go all right.
It's part of the job, I guess, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. I've just noticed Aaron just mentioned that he said he's having issues hearing. So is there anybody else?
Dave has also said he can't see or hear anything. So
yeah, so that's okay. If you guys are having problems, just restart your session. I'll just make a mention of that. Is there anybody else having issues? Yep.
No, there's a few people that say
all good and born. Yep. Okay, fantastic. Yep, all good here. Fantastic. So for those people that are having issues, just restart the session. You probably can't hear me anyway. All right. Okay. So, yep, fantastic. All right. So the next one is, it's a pretty open-ended question by Philip was, cycling in Europe, good tips. So let's talk about some of the stuff that you encounter with your clients and, what sort of experiences that you like your clients to get when they're over in Europe riding.
Yeah, I mean, good tips. There could be a list of 50, I guess, but typically the first one that I always like to get across to potential clients and guests is what they want to get out of the trip, because there's so many types of tours that you can do or cycling you can do in Europe. So yep. Do they want to ride and see a pro race at the same time, or do they just want to ride the epic mythical areas without the stress of the race and all of that and enjoy it at a slower pace? Do they want to do grand fondos and just base themselves in an area and sign up to an event? So usually I try to find out a little bit about where their interests lie so that way they'll get the best out of one of our trips, because we cater for all those different styles. Because often we find one client might sign up the first time, loving the Tour de France, want to do that. They have a great time, but then the next trip, a couple of years later, they want to do something where they can just explore a bit further and get into the smaller towns and the lifestyle as well. So that's really, for me, the main tip. Yeah. Work out what you want to see and do first, and then we can cater and select a tour appropriately.
Yeah, I know. We did your Spring Classics tour, which was very different to your Spanish tour. And, we got to ride on the cobbles and did a couple of Grand Fondos. What were the two Grand Fondos we did? We did
Tour de Flanders and Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah.
Paris-Roubaix, which is just awesome, And then we did Spain, and of course we climbed the highest sealed road in Europe. What was it? Valletta. Beautiful. So,
and that was part of saw 4 stages of the Vuelta at the same time. So we have, as David said, we've actually done 2 of Paul's tours, and with the Spring Classics, we not only rode the Grand Fondos, but we actually saw the pros race as well, the ladies and the men on Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. And saw actually it's a 1-day classic, saw it from different points. Paul just knows how to get around, which is awesome. And then the Tour of Spain included the stages of Vuelta, plus some of the cultural stuff that Paul, why don't you tell people about the way you kind of structure your tours with the riding and the non-riding stuff, because that's one of the things that attracts me.
Yeah, obviously being an Australian now living over here, I sort of understand, and being a traveller and enjoying that myself, you don't just travel 16,000 kilometres to cycle. If you can also enjoy and get to know part of the country, its cuisine, its history, its culture, that's obviously big parts of travel as well. So we like to capture all of that. So in terms of cycling, we'll get up after breakfast and typically say 9 o'clock till that 2-3 p.m. with coffee stops and lunch breaks. That'll be sort of the cycling designated time. And that allows enough time then to get to the hotels, unpack, be able to have time to a bit of rest and recovery. And then also the whole afternoon, seeing its long hours with sunlight, you get to visit the townships, we do some excursions. We see in certain places there's great cycling museums, bike shops, fortresses, castles. We like to get to all those sites and also enjoy a nice dinner with a local beer or a good wine as well. So that's the philosophy we have. The cycling's, great local routes. We know them well, but also adding that extra as well, which, some of the European providers are a little bit cycling focused because they don't realize how different Europe is to Australia. So they get Australian or New Zealand clients and they just think they're there to cycle. And obviously that's a major focus, but adding on those extra afternoon and early evening activities, I think helps create a real travel experience.
And for the person who wants to travel with a non-cycling partner as well, there's, the cultural aspect.
Yeah, and with the non-cyclists, because most of our bases are 2 or 3 night bases, it means they're welcome to jump in a support van if that's what they want to do and take video and photos. But if there's a day or two where they want to just explore the town, we've got plenty of suggestions and help to be able to let them explore at their own time and then link up with the group as well. So very flexible. Yeah,
and you're based in Spain, so it just makes it so much easier to get access to Europe for you and really explore the countryside around there. So, you've been over there for how many years now?
I've been up back and forwards for 10 years, but living full-time for the last 4 years. And then those years before that, it was 6 months in Australia, 6 months in Spain. So, got a young family now over here, so we're a bit more grounded, settled in Spain.
Fantastic. So what are some of the other tips or pitfalls that people can, get themselves into trouble on a cycling tour if they don't organise themselves?
Depends. There's many things we can still touch on, but one of the things I also find a lot is that people spend, 90% of their training focus on climbing, which is obviously great because you don't want to blow up on the climb and you want to enjoy it and take in all the scenery at the same time and ride with the group. But some of these descents can be anywhere from 15 to 30 kilometers in some places. So many people have maybe cycled 6K descents, or if you're out the outskirts of Melbourne or whatever, that's some of the longest descents you can do. So a bit of good old descending practice goes a long way on a cycling tour as well, because that way you can really, after doing all the big work to get up to the top, you can actually really enjoy the descent. So I know when I came on one of your boot camps, the refreshers on the descending skills with you and Alex, David, was really good as well. So these sort of activities where you link up with an event or a coach and you can get some descending practice before coming on a tour, I think's vital for enhancing your experience. So that's one thing that we see very often, that people climb really well, but they could still do with a lot of help with descending. And we on the tour talk people through that, but it's obviously a good chance to get a bit of practice in beforehand as well.
And your bunch riding skills too, because, when you're transitioning across to the climb or the descent, you're often in a bunch and, it's nice to feel safe in a bunch, without someone doing random moves. So, kind of getting used to riding in a bunch too, I think is also something worthwhile.
Yeah, our group sizes are typically 6 to 12, so they're not your big 30, 50 size groups, but definitely having that awareness in a group and being courteous and keeping all that good etiquette's a big help as well.
Fantastic. So, and of course, riding on the right-hand side of the road.
Follow the guide.
Follow the guide.
Especially for the first couple of days.
Chainring in the gutter.
I know I was riding over in your tour in Spain, and I was playing around with my camera, and and you guys rode off, and then I chased after you, and I was riding on the left-hand side of the road, and as I was riding up on the left-hand side of this road, there was a car coming towards me, and I was thinking, what was the car doing on the wrong side of the road? I quickly realised, so you can kind of slip into it if you don't watch yourself, and it's great, obviously, being around people that are riding on the right-hand side of the road, and entering the roundabouts and stuff. The other thing that I noticed that when we came to intersections, especially we were in Belgium when we were coming to intersections, because we were on a lot of cycle paths, which were fantastic infrastructure in Belgium for that. And I'd be always looking the wrong way when I got to the intersection and be going, why am I seeing the back of these cars? It's like, because you had to look the other way to make sure that you were looking at the traffic that was coming towards you. So
they're little things that take a couple of days, usually a couple of rides to sort out, but looking to the left in intersections is the big one.
Yeah, totally.
We've got a couple of questions. One from Julian about the pros and cons of hiring bikes. One of the things that we did when we went to the Spring Classics was we hired bikes from Paul, and one of the reasons was I actually didn't want to take my bike over the cobblestones and the pave. So we hired bikes. So, and the advantage of that was obviously I didn't have to kind of worry about my precious cargo. Didn't have to worry about transporting it. So also when we did the Spring Classics, we were doing a little bit of travelling on our own. So and the hotel rooms in Europe are traditionally quite small. So if you are planning on kind of doing a bit of your own travelling by train and plane and stuff like that, consider that when you're taking a bike. Some trains are also a little bit particular about you taking bikes. So there's that consideration. With the bikes that we hired for the Spring Classics, Paul had set them up so they had the fatter tyre on at 28s. So, he kind of made it specific for that. For the cobbles. For the cobbles. For Spain, for example, we took our own bikes, and that was because we were basically flying into Madrid. Paul picked our bikes up from there and then transported them down to the start. And then at the end of the tour, we got transported basically to the hotel beside the airport. So and we didn't do a lot of travel on our own. So that was kind of, we didn't have the logistic challenge of moving our bikes around, and it wasn't cobbles, it was straight road surface. So I think it depends on what your plans are overall in your tour, of whether or not I'd hire or take your own.
And you also, in Spain, we're doing some long climbs, so you want to be, a lot of people like to be set up on bikes that they know for a long climb, their body's going to adapt. So we find it's usually 50-50 who come and hire bikes. And we've got a whole range of between 105 and Ultegra bikes, which for a week on a tour go really well and people are happy with. And again, we can rig them up. Like for the classics, we rig them up to take out some of the vibrations, so they can also run slightly lower tire pressures. And then for the other rides, we get all your bike dimensions as well, and we fit them before you come on tour as well.
Yeah, on the first day on Paul's tours, it's kind of an ease yourself into it day, so you can kind of test out your bike, whether or not you've travelled with one, or some people even in Spain hired bikes from Paul because they were doing a lot of travel as well. But, you bring your own, they will bring their own pedals, their own saddle. So, we just kind of make sure the bikes are set up before we kind of really did the longer days, so which I think is really good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's important that before you go along to a tour, that you make sure that you do get your bike well serviced and it's all running well. I mean, the last thing you want to do is get over to Europe and you've got issues with your bike. You've got issues with bike, with brakes or gears or chain rings. And the other thing is that we usually allow a couple of days before we start the tour for our bikes to arrive, because I know when we travelled to Italy, our bikes were delayed by 3 days. They were not really lost in transit, but they were just delayed in transit. So sometimes it's important to allow a couple of days, before you start the tour, if you are planning on transporting your bike over. I know when we did our riding in Italy, we were travelling for half of it. We were over for 4 weeks and we travelled for half of it, and the other half we were cycling. We actually stored our bikes at the airport. And Jody, you found a great deal, didn't you? You could store the bikes at the airport for a really good price.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of worked out okay because we flew into Rome and then did travelling, and then we had to go back to Rome to start the tour. So as long as you're going back to your destination point, it obviously makes sense if you can find some long-term storage. And I know in America, airports don't have storage, and that's a safety thing. So just make sure that if you are planning on taking your bike and travelling, that you can find storage for it. Otherwise, it's almost less stress to hire a bike.
Often what we find, say, with people bringing their own bikes, out of every 10 clients, one bike will arrive with an issue. So it might be that a derailleur hanger's been bent and it's causing problems. So often, because there's so many varieties from every brand of bike, we suggest people bring a couple of spare ones with them. And also, there might be some wheels damaged or whatever. Often we have one or two spare bikes that we just bring in the vans at all times for these issues, so that if there's a day or two where we're sorting out an issue with the client's own bike, they can still jump on and ride one of ours. There's some spare ones if there's issues, spare wheels. So if someone's bike arrives without their wheels, well, they can at least still ride their bike, and we can mix and match a bit until things are sorted, because I've been doing this for many years and we understand people want to ride their own bikes, but things arrive not always in perfect condition. So we're there to help and have that extra equipment and gear on hand as well.
Yeah, I always, when we go travelling, I always take a spare derailleur hanger. So we've got our bikes and we've got spare derailleur hangers for them, and we always take them. But the other important thing is that when you do pack it, some people take the rear derailleur off their bike, and that helps prevent it from getting bumped. We make sure we use soft bags, and we just make sure that the derailleur is well within the bag. So we actually change it up into the bag, so it's actually a long way away. The other thing is that if you've got a battery-operated bike, with the battery-operated gears, electronic Di2 or whatever, that you make sure you take your charger with you, because we've had people actually arrive at our boot camp and in transit, the gear lever's been stuck in the engaged position, and it's flattened their battery while they're flying down to Melbourne. So it's important that, if you do take a Di2 bike over, that you make sure that you take your charger with you, regardless of whether you've charged your battery up or not. So just those little things, they make a big difference. Yeah. So
Brian's question, Paul, do you want to tackle that one? How long, where, cost and support?
Which one is Brian's?
So Brian says he's more interested in details of tours. How long, where, cost and support?
So typically a tour that we run are typically sort of the 8 to 9 night tours. Obviously, we run private tours for groups who sometimes ask for 11 or 12 nights where they want something a bit longer, but typically they're 8 or 9 nights. So we find that's typically a lot of riding. So anywhere from 8 or 9 fully supported guided rides, that's a fair amount of riding to do. What was the next part? The costs are usually, for which now being Spanish, we charge in euros. So they're usually around 3,000 euros will get you a fully supported tour. So we're probably, for cost and price, we're probably in the middle range there, but we like to think we offer the services of the full elite ones as well, because all our guides and systems based here in Europe already. So for us, we like to set a price that people can come across and enjoy and get the full smotherings of all the tour with the great restaurants and excursions and the wine, but also have a mix of guides between Australian and Europeans so that they get that, I guess, comfortable nature of Australia, New Zealand, but also get that little bit of European flair as well, which some of the European guides can bring as well. So typically that's the cost structure we have there.
So, and I'll just comment on the support since I've received it. I find, particularly with Sierra Sports and Tours, one of the great things is that I speak no words of Spanish at all. I'd tell Paul what I wanted, and he'd give me the menu and he'd translate it for me, and then he'd tell the waiter exactly what I wanted, and I've got food allergies. So we'd then make sure that wasn't going to be an issue. So, it wasn't just support out on the road, but the support on the road, there was always water and drinks and bars, and, they catered for my nut allergies in the food as well out on the road. But you kind of pull up at a coffee shop, and Paul would handle the ordering, and we'd divvy up the bill, but it was all kind of taken care of and everything like that. So and the guys are you just take your bags down if you were changing hotels that night, and the guys would load up the vans, and you'd head off on your ride, and you'd get to the vans would follow you through the ride, and one at the back, and kind of one drifting towards the front and the middle, and then when we got to the hotel, they'd all be cheery and happy and unloading the van and greeting you again for dinner that night. And so the support crew were there 24 hours a day, basically.
Yeah. For our crew, it's their profession, so we make sure we pick guides who are not there for their own holiday. They have a great time because they make new friends and mix with the group, but that's their job, and they want to make sure that the guests are getting everything out of the trip. So yeah, it's good.
They were great.
Yeah, no problems. So no, it's fantastic, and I know on top of just the riding and stuff, we did an evening we went to see some flamingo dancing, and I assume, Paul, most of your tours are a bit like that. You've got these evenings booked in, and it was all part of the tour, so it was fantastic. And certainly we had a few lunches and stuff that were part of the tour. So, it was great. I was looking around thinking, how is Paul going to afford all this? It just seems to be, exceptionally good value for money. So,
good contacts. You got to have the contacts.
Good contacts.
Yeah.
So it was great. And that's a great thing about obviously traveling with a group, is that you get these economies of scale, and you don't have to worry about anything. We love going on tours and being carted around and just being looked after, really. And it's kind of, because we're cycle coaches, we're having to do that ourselves with our clients, and it's nice just to have somebody else look after us when we go out riding our bike in Europe. So it's fantastic. Yeah. So let's get off a little bit of this, and let's talk about some of the iconic rides, and then we'll get back onto some of these questions, because I know that people want to know a little bit about, some of the tours that you run, some of the places that you go, and some of the places that people can explore on their own if they choose to, Paul.
Well, in terms of iconic locations, for me, that one that just always wins is the Dolomites in Italy. You've got to pick the window of the season to go to ride there, because obviously there's fairly extreme conditions in the winter. But if you're there through June, July, August, you're going to have a great chance to do some awesome cycling. And it's just peak after peak, but they're not necessarily your 10% plus grades. There's lots of 6s and 7s and 8s, and you can ride 6K climbs up to 15K climbs, and a lot of Giro history, a lot of that's in that area where it's getting close to the Austrian border, so you're getting different blends of Italian and Austrian influences as well. And you've got rides like the Sala Ronda, which is a loop around the Sala Massif, which is 4 climbs. It's only a 60K loop, but you get 4 climbs in there, and for me, that's one of the most beautiful places in the world to cycle. So that's the Dolomites. Also, Pyrenees, the French Alps always I seem to get a bigger focus with the Tour de France, but for me, for beauty and lighter traffic and more roads that you can ride and link through valleys and then get to mountains, the Pyrenees, the Midi-Pyrenees are just a wonderful location as well. So anywhere through Argeles-Gazost, a town in the Midi-Pyrenees, from there you can ride Soleure, Bisque, Hautacam, Luthardiden, Tourmalet, and there's also some obscure ones which the Tour de France can't ride because of protection of national parks. So Gavarnie up to old glaciers. So Dolomites and Pyrenees for straight out beauty are amazing for me. I'm also a little biased because I live in southern Spain now, Andalusia, and there's some Sierra Grazalema, where we actually started the Vuelta trip. We had a few nights there. That to me is it's Spain's Dolomites, but it's totally different because you got all the whitewashed, painted villages nestled into the hills, lots of winding roads, low traffic, good weather because down in the south, 300 days of sun a year down here. So for me, that's also another great place to explore, which not everybody actually gets to. And then, well, the list goes on, but I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add any other comments.
Well, I mean, you know, when we were riding through Spain, I was just amazed at how quiet the roads were. We were on really, really quiet roads, hardly any hardly any traffic, and the scenery was just absolutely to die for. I mean, it was just absolutely stunning. And you know, it was temperate. Like we got there just after the heat wave, and it was very, very, very warm, but not really hot. So, you know, we were sort of in the 25 to 30 degree sort of range. So it was just really, really pleasant. So, I mean, obviously timing the time of the year that you go, if you go over to Spain sort of earlier on during the summer, it might be a little bit hotter, whereas, you know, you might look at other places.
Southern Spain, September, October, and May and June are great months, but July and August, you've got to get out fairly early. But then, the Vuelta's always September, so it's a good time to ride in Spain. That was some more of the areas where I guess there's big mountains, but other places where our clients have enjoyed us taking them are some of the cycling and wine-related regions as well.
Okay.
So there's two areas in Italy, which is the Prosecco wine region, just really an hour north of Venice. So through there, you've got lots of rolling terrain, terraced vineyards, the Prosecco wine. It's amazing through there. And the Rioja Tempranillo red wines are getting big in Australia now as well. That's the home of Tempranillo is in central Spain. So the Rioja wine region's a top place for cycling as well. And then you've got Chianti in Tuscany. So for me, when you for people who love food and wine and want to still do some great cycling, they're three amazing regions also, which haven't got the big mountains, but you've got 2 to 3 kilometer climbs, undulating terrain. You can get a bit of everything, but also enjoy your afternoons as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know when we're over in the spring classics, I mean, we got to ride two of the great rides, Paris-Roubaix and Flanders. And the riding's really different compared to what we did through Spain and what we've done in Italy as well, because obviously you're riding on cobbles. And, you know, Belgium's kind of these steep bergs that are really short and steep and punchy with cobbles on them. And France, you know, some of the stuff we were riding on that was the cobbles are very rough, especially like the Forest of Arenberg, you know, as part of the Paris-Roubaix was incredibly treacherous. But it's such an iconic ride to do. I mean, I've always wanted to ride the Paris-Roubaix but never race it. So, you know, I got the opportunity to do that. And, you know, I know that we rocked up a couple of days before and we got onto the cobbles and got to experience it. So we were ready for the Grand Fondo when it came around, which was great. They call it a sportif in France, don't they?
Yeah,
French call it sportifs, and in Italy it's a Grand Fondo. So, yeah, or a Ronda. So, you know, it's great. And when we were over in Italy, we did the Nova Colli Grand Fondo, which is based out of Cirenatico, and that was a stunning ride as well. And you just feel like you're riding in the Tour de France. You know, it's like there's just small villages. You're obviously on the other side of the road. Some of the roads are closed when you ride in these events. And when the roads are open, I mean, generally when you're riding over in Europe, the traffic's just so fantastic as well. Like, they're really, really considerate. You hardly get any issues at all. And, you know, no problems with big trucks. But once you get out into the countryside, it's like everybody's driving around these little putt-putt cars. So it's like, it's not like here in Australia where they're all on the big four-wheel drives. You know, everything's sort of at quite a slower pace. So
yeah, we're very lucky here in Europe because there is I mean, Australia has a strong culture of cycling when you go back and look at some of the long races. But in terms of Europe's maintained it, and cyclists get a lot of respect, which is not always the case. So when you go through Holland, Belgium, and places like that, everyone's grandmother's still riding their bike to the shops. So when people are driving their cars around, they realize that they could be family members who are still out on their bike. So there's a lot of more patience and respect. So I think in all the tours, I've had one car beep at me. in over 6 years. And so when I come back to Melbourne, usually I get beeped within the first half an hour. So sometimes I prefer just to stay riding my bike over here and visit Oz just to see the family and the friends.
Yeah, so it's certainly very safe. I know I was a little bit nervous going over to Spain because, it's not a wealthy country. And we didn't have any problems with security at all. We didn't have anybody approach us. In fact, we had a few people approach us in Italy. I found that I actually felt less secure in Italy than I did in Spain, which was funny, really. But yeah, I was a little bit concerned. But when we got over there, everything was fine. Like, I didn't have any problems at all around security. And everybody, Spanish people are just fantastic. They're very, very welcoming. The Italians certainly out in the countryside are fantastic too. So, French, well, they're always going to be a bit French. So, it's just the way they are, really.
It's a little bit more hit and miss, but because a lot of the French places that we deal with, they speak Spanish, and so because we speak Spanish, we get a better rapport with them, and so we often use, even though our guides all have a blend of, we all speak English, but between that we all have Spanish, Italian, and French as well to advanced levels. So whenever we work in France, particularly, we like to pick spots and providers that also have Spanish, because they also then treat us really well. So it's about knowing a language or two and finding your way around to get the service that you'd like to receive.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little about riding options. I've got a question from Rod. He's asked, what riding options are there in terms of difficulty, distance, leisure, photography, culture, and traveling with non-partners? So we talked a little bit about traveling with non-partner, but let's talk about, difficulty and distance, opportunities to do leisure activities, photography, and culture. So give us an idea. Like, obviously, we've talked a little bit about the Spanish tour where we got to see flamingo dancing, and we saw a castle, and and that was all integrated into the riding and stuff.
So usually in places, for example, Italy and France, there's an abundance of Roman and archaeological sites as well. So we're always visiting different bridges, which are amazing. Avignon has got some amazing bridges. We're also visiting the different wineries. I think the agriturismo is where you got hotels which also got the restaurant and the winery there, and you get this integrated experience, is something that's really great fun to visit wineries, drink the local wine and stuff like that. Apart from that, if it's a private tour, we've many times created specific itineraries that are for cyclists and the non-cyclists. But if it's just there's one or two, we do our best to incorporate and create side projects for them. Not necessarily have their own guide with them the whole time, but we create opportunities for them to do their own things. Photography is part of the tour no matter what, because with all the different mountain stops and lookout points, the crew and not just the guides but the guests as well find all the vantage points and want to stop and take photos, and there's no problem with that at all. We all combine hundreds and sometimes thousands of photos and share them around to everybody as well, so that at the end of the trip everybody's got photos from different angles. So photography and video is a must on tours. It's something that you look back on over the years. I know you also took a lot of video, David, on your phones.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we videoed everything. We videoed all the rides. So we're going to put that into our online training centre and connect them up to Swift and Trainer Road, so we can, you can actually ride all the stuff on Paul's tour.
You won't have to come. You'll be able to watch it and ride from your living room.
No. It's not going to replace. Sitting in a garage on a home trainer watching a TV screen and the video rolling by. I think it'll inspire people to get over there more. Certainly. So, but yeah, we are going to, and well, when we get a little bit more time to get that all set up. But so it's just fantastic. So
there was also a question about difficulty, I think, or distance.
Yeah, difficulty. Yeah, distance.
So you would have seen on the trip in Spain as well. There, on a couple of the days, we created some options as well. So that, typically there's always, like we've mentioned earlier, Europe's mountainous, so there's usually a climb every day somewhere, but on certain days we give the option where possible to add a second optional climb, and quite often half the group will take that on because they'll look at the itinerary and say, this is what I'm targeting myself for. I want to do this day, or I want to take a slightly easier and a rest day there. And people look at the program, and we talk to them during the initial briefing so that they get a feel of what's available if they want to do a little bit extra as well. Because if we are finishing our days at that 2 or 3 p.m. and there's a chance to do cultural activities, 1 or 2 people or more might decide, well, this day I want to do some more riding. And so we can align one van with an extra guide to take special missions to, I guess, increase the cycling CV and do another mountain or two. So I think David definitely took advantage of that on one of the days and got the double climbs through.
You also took advantage of a rest day.
Yeah,
the rest day is important as well. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, because you took the rest day to prepare then for the highest road in Europe, the next. So there's always, you got to be smart about things as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, the thing is that you do accrue a massive training stress score or training fatigue doing these tours. So it's important to sort of manage that load and making sure that, you know, you are recovering in the evenings and getting good night's sleep and not drinking too much. You know, it's always good to enjoy what you're doing, but not, you know, eat and drink to it. So, yeah, in moderation, and just enjoy and savor in the ambience of the environment and the culture and stuff. And it's all, but I know, you know, we went to a bullfighting, what do you call them? They're not like a coliseum, they're a bullfighting. Bull ring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bull ring. We went to a bull ring, you know, which was fantastic in the afternoon, and did some walking around, which was great because, you know, you're riding your bike in the morning and then you get to walk around a little bit just to sort of, you know, get the stiffness out of you and just to sort of get back that, you know, that mobility back again. So, you know, I'm a big fan of walking, you know, after riding because it just helps rebalance the body and stuff. So we've got a couple of questions here. There was one about massage.
Massage is in our Tour de France trip this year. We, for the first time, rolled out had a guide who was 100% on trip, who's an osteopath. So there was treatments that were available. It's not something that we roll out on every tour, but there's definitely certain tours because the Tour de France trip we did this year in the French Alps, just through the nature of the race and where we're going, it was actually a very challenging tour. So we actually had an osteopath on that trip. So it's something that we're looking at more and more because it is extra value.
Is it something you're going to have for the World Masters?
Yeah, we do on the side different contracts for triathlon groups as well, for international races. And for the Varese UCI Gran Fondo, we already have about 6 signed up for that. We'll be having that support for that trip.
Fantastic. So somebody asked a question about briefly touched on hygiene and nutrition.
Hygiene and nutrition. So
I'll talk a little bit about hygiene.
Talking about cleaning their.
Making sure, you know. I don't know. Maybe it was Jan that asked the question, hygiene and nutrition. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And Jan, if you're still on the call, just allude to whether hygiene's around. You know, like if we were traveling to India, you know, you have to be a bit careful about what you eat and that sort of thing. But generally, you know, the water quality is good in European countries, and you can drink water out of the tap. There's no problems there, and you know, bottled water and stuff like that. Generally, you know, it's really important. To make sure you're washing your hands all the time before you eat anything. And, you know, if you're certainly eating food with your hands, it's important to sanitize them. And I know when we were traveling through Europe, previous cases, Jody bought a little bottle of sanitizer, and we would just pull that out before we started eating anything. Just put it on our hands, cleaned our hands with sanitizer. So there's those sort of things. Obviously, when you're going to the toilet, make sure you're cleaning your hands afterwards, and reducing the amount of contact you have with surfaces around you. Traveling on aeroplanes is always a little bit interesting. I know when I got back from Spain, you know, I managed to pick up a head cold on the way back, and you know, that and jet lag was a bit rough. And but you know, it's just on the way over there. You know, it's just important when you're in the aeroplane, making sure that you do wash your hands when you go to the toilet, or after you've been to the toilet, that you do wash your hands before you eat anything, and you know, keep your hands away from your face and those sort of things. Jody?
Jan's just responded laundry.
Laundry. Oh, is it laundry? All right. Okay, hygiene. All right. Paul, laundry?
Laundry, I mean, a lot of the hotels, they don't actually have their own setup for, it's not a public system, so it's usually all will have laundry service. So you drop in your clothes that afternoon, and the next day you'll have them. Yep. Most clients find though they bring a little jar with some detergent, and just quickly after their ride in their hotel room, they scrub their clothes down and hang them out, and things are very fast drying. Seeing it's summer when our tours are over here, so. But then at different trips, we've also still made a little mission down to the local laundromat, and we've done a trip there as well. So usually 90% of the people are happy bringing their own little bit of detergent, and we can provide that as well, and cleaning in the hotel and setting themselves up like that. But then if there's others who have more, sometimes people have done a week traveling before they get on tour. So on those occasions, we help get a bigger laundry batch done for them. But typically it's looked after by individuals.
I found when we did the bike tour in Italy that the Italian hotels are more set up to handle cyclist laundry, and they also kind of offer bike washing bays and stuff like that. In Spain and Belgium, we also had the ability to wash down our bikes. In Belgium, it was only when we'd been out in the rain and we were absolutely covered from head to toe in grit that the hotelier took pity on us, I think, and did our laundry for us at that stage.
Neat.
Yeah.
But wife washed it for us.
Yeah. We were pretty grotty. But other times, as David said, we've just kind of washed it out in the shower, and I normally take an elastic clothesline and hang that out in the room and string everything up to make sure it's dry the next day. I normally travel with 3 pairs of Nicks, washed, one pair just been washed, one pair drying, and I've just worn one. So
yeah, in terms of a tip about clothing, seeing Jody just mentioned the gear that she typically brings, a lot of people also come on our tours saying, "Oh, great European summer. Well, brings my summer gear," but you've also got to realise sometimes the cycling is taking you to 2,000 metres elevation or beyond, and just because it's summer, it could be 15, 20 degrees or sometimes more cooler at the top than when you set off at the base, and then it could be windy. So, okay, you bring your summer gear, but you also need to have a little bit of flexibility in your gear so that you can cover different seasons as well.
Yeah, I know when we were doing the Spring Classics, I mean, it was like 3 or 4 degrees first thing in the morning, and kind of warmed up to about 7, you know. So it was,
had a cold one.
Some of the days. Yeah, we had a bit of a cold one at the Spring Classics, but you know, when you're in Belgium at that time of the year, you know, the weather could be doing anything. So we certainly brought all our winter gear with us, and there were a couple of days where we had some really good weather. But you know, obviously that time of the year it's a little bit cooler. But when we're just coming back to the clothing thing, you know, Jody takes a washing line, and we basically, when we're having a shower, we kind of got our clothes, cycling clothes in the if it's a bath or the shower, we actually have in the base, and we're kind of standing on it while we're having a shower to sort of, you know, wash it up a bit, and then we sort of rinse it out, and then we get the towels and we roll the cycling clothing into the towels to take all the moisture out of them, and then, you know, Jody's got her clothesline. We've already strung it up somewhere in the bathroom, and we'll just hang our clothes up in there. And most of the time it's dry by the morning. So, but you do need to be a little bit organised with that and make sure that you're, you know, planning ahead, because the last thing you want is obviously to be riding around in a pair of, you know, Nicks that are getting a little bit dirty. So, because from a hygienic point of view, just to reduce the chance of saddle sores and those sort of things. So, you know, it's just important to keep those, you know, Nicks cleaned every day, but cycling jerseys usually they dry really quickly, so there's no issues there. Yeah.
I think one of the things with having the support bands like we have at boot camp and Paul has on his tours is that the support bands weren't all that far away. So at the stop, for water or for some food, you were able to change your jacket or something. So if you were kind of getting a bit cool, you could put something on, or you could offload clothing. So we had a little day bag in the van each day with just, I have spare batteries for the camera and bits and pieces and, a bit of money and bit of clothing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the support vans are always there.
Yeah, if it gets cold, you put some clothing on, you pull it out of the sport van. I usually get pretty rugged up in the morning when it's a bit cooler, and then I'm just stripping stuff off over the day, and it's just a matter of riding up to the sport van or waving them through and then just, throwing it through the window and they just look after it. So, it's fantastic around that, and they're carrying your food. And, we had spare clothes for when we got to the rest stops for at the end of the tour. I mean, one day we finished at the beach, didn't we, Paul? And we had our beach clothes there. So, we changed out of our cycling clothes and our beach clothes, and we had lunch alongside the beach, which is fantastic. And then we went just down the road to one of the pubs and watched one of the stages of the Vuelta. So it was a fantastic day. We got in some awesome climbing and a descent.
Every day has the cycling element, but then something different as well. So if you're up cycling in the mountains and then there's a chance to do 20k descent and finish down on the beach, well, we go for it. We love that, having that different experience of seeing different geography and a different lunch stop down on the beach. So we like to, we create, there was a question I think I saw there saying who creates the itineraries. Well, now when we're not doing, it's me. Now we're not actually on the ground running tours that are, I guess, from March to October every year. So now we're October, November, even late September, we've been full on preparing a good 10 or so itineraries that are already on the web. And so having, I guess, the experience of cycling through dozens of countries here in Europe over the last 10 years, it's really good fun actually creating itineraries that have got a blend of everything. So,
Fantastic. So just Adrian's asked the question, thinking of taking the family, 2 kids for 2 weeks sightseeing, riding, is it more cost effective to travel via camper van or campgrounds or car/hotel? So what's your thoughts on that, Paul? Is it more cheaper to go caravan, camper van, campgrounds or car, hotel?
I mean, I think camper van, we have many clients who finish a tour with us and then we drop them off often at a camper van location, and they then continue doing another, could be up 10 to 14 days with camper van, and they have a great experience there as well, exploring a little bit on their own. So they often come on a tour with us, get that little bit of extra support and assistance and confidence because they've, I guess, seen the lay of the land with us and how the different travel and tour operators go about things, and then they pick up their camper van and they can go off and have a bit more time to explore Europe. I think they typically find that's the best value for money because not only do they have their accommodation, they have their transport at the same time sorted, they're carrying their bike easily and inside, which doesn't get damaged. And they can just decide one day, well, I really love this spot. There's 2 more potential with their map riding areas. Let's stay here for a couple more days. And they haven't pre-booked hotels that they've got to get to. So I find with our Sierra guests who want to do a little bit extra and take on the camper van option, they have a ball. And I think with kids, they'd find that would be really great fun as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Julian's asked a question about different levels of insurance, such in case of accidents. So we pay for our trip via our credit card that's got our travel insurance as part of the deal, don't we, Jodie?
Yeah. Just read the details.
Yeah, just read your details on that. So
know what you're covered for.
Yeah, you know what you're covered for. So you can get obviously travel insurance depending on what options what you want to get. But also we've got bike insurance, specific bike insurance under our House and Contents. So our House and Contents with a company that insures bicycles. and that covers our bikes for international travel for up to 4 weeks or something like that, or 6 weeks. So it's important to check your policies, because you got to make sure that you're covered, especially when you're traveling overseas. It's really, really important to have travel insurance, because you can get into a lot of problems if something goes wrong. Not that not that we want that to happen, but certainly it's always good to have that peace of mind that if something does go wrong, that you've got some sort of insurance. So, Paul, do you got any comments on travel insurance?
I mean, the main thing is also double checking if you are bringing your own bike with you as well, that your bike's covered as well, because sometimes the premium amounts that they'll cover you for damage of a bike are nowhere near the value of your actual bike. So just double check that. And that's one that there's special companies who just dedicated to bike travel insurance as well.
Well, we go through Cycle Cover. I think we've been insured with them for years. So, and they insure and you've got to make sure that, sometimes your bike's only insured when it's not in transit. So if it's in storage at home, then it's insured. But if you take it out for a ride, or you put it in your car and drive it somewhere, or you put it on an aeroplane, or you race, it's like not insured. So, it's important to, check your policies and shop around, and certainly get travel insurance. I know organisations like Bicycle Network offer third-party insurance. I don't think they offer travel insurance, but they do some basic sort of cover. But it's just really important to cover that off. All right. So Penny's asked the question, what ratio of male to female riders in your tours?
Yeah, it's been really, initially we were finding through the different Australian contacts at the start, a lot of the tours were sort of 70% male, 30% female, but now it's, in the last 2 years, it's really evening up. Finding a lot more women finding out about us, and that we're not a tour operator that's running such a training camp where people are just trying to smash each other up. We're here to enjoy the riding and create a community. So people are now finding that out, and once they come, telling their friends. And so that sort of, at the moment, is sort of 75%. It's repeat business. So they're bringing their partners, they're bringing friends. So it's probably now almost 50-50. I think on the Vuelta trip, that was probably 3 females, 5 males from memory, but it's getting very close to 50-50 in those last couple of seasons, because also I think a lot of the women's cyclists, maybe they're getting a lot more confident now. They're positive and they say, we can do this. Don't be scared. There's support there, and if you're booking 6 months out and you've got a bit of training, you've got some time, some motivation to get prepared, our female clients are doing wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up in close to the hour, but we did. I just mentioned in the promotional emails that we sent out that we had an offer. So Paul's been very generous, and he's made an offer to all the people that have attended this webinar tonight to get €150 off a tour in 2018. And what I'll do is I'll just put that link up there. You also get. I'll just post the offer. I'll just publish that in your little window on the right-hand side, so you'll see that come up. And you'll get a link to that after you're attending the webinar. So it should come through in about half an hour to an hour, depending on the technology we've got driving us in the back end. So you'll get that link sent to you. But if you have any issues with not getting the link, just let us know and we'll resend it through. So what the deal is that if you subscribe to Paul's newsletter list, you'll get that discount code sent to you. So we've got that all set up, and you'll see that when you click on this link, it'll go to a landing page where you just fill out your details and you opt into Paul's newsletter list. Now, if you don't receive any emails from Paul, that's fine. You can still get your discount code, and you can just unsubscribe at any time. So there's no pressure to stay on Paul's list, but certainly, obviously, if you want to do a tour with Paul, we're making a little bit of an incentive for you with that €150 discount, which is amazing. That's great value considering the tours are awesome value to start off with. So that's
I think the newsletters are really inspiring. I'm on the list, and I read about it, and I get all excited. I might do a next one. So I wouldn't unsubscribe too quick.
Yeah, exactly. So that's cool. So we've got a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So the first one, and if you've got any more questions, now's the time to ask them, because we are going to wrap this up in the next few minutes. So if there's any more questions and there's something that you desperately want to know about, then certainly ask it in the chat there. Chris has asked the question, what are the age groups?
Mm-hmm. So typically our age groups are sort of the 40 to 60 age group. That's our target market. So usually what we find is a lot of people would love to be doing these trips, but they've also got young families, they've got lots of things on the go. But usually we find, when we say 40 to 60, it's probably even 45 to 60 is the majority of the age groups. So maybe got the kids who turned 18 or older, and they've got a little bit more free time and can disappear to Europe, and maybe some extra money is freed up and they can take and use it on themselves for a change. So we find that's our market, and that's the groups, and everybody's got a very similar, I guess, mindset, philosophy, loving travel, loving being part of the group. Everything's very social. And what's really satisfying for me as an operator and a guide is so many times we find at the end of the trip, people have actually made new friends from other states. And then 6 months later, I'm still sitting here in Europe and I see everybody else catching up in Australia at different events in different states and doing rides together. And it's like, hey, where's my invite? But it's something that's really nice, building this sort of family-orientated, because we are a family business, family-orientated and community-focused.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Rod's asked the question, will their replay be available? Yes, it will be. So after this webinar, you'll get a link to the replay. You'll get that regardless of if you watch the webinar or not. And you can forward that link on to anybody. And you can also forward the link that we send you to get the discount code to anybody that you want as well, so that they can take advantage of that as well. Are you happy for that to happen, Paul?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Reese, probably the last question for the night. What percentage of clients bring their own bikes? I think you already answered that question. But
it really is. It's typically very close to 50-50, because, as Jody was mentioning, people who just fly into Europe and get our transfers straight from airport to airport often bring their own bike, because they've got no other internal European flight connections, and they're comfortable to do that. But those who hang around to do some pre or post tour activities and got some tricky, a lot of people also come for someone's wedding or a different event, and they don't want to then have their bike with them as well, and they take the hire option. So it's some tours might be 80% higher, but then on the overall would be 50-50.
Fantastic. All right. Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap it up there. Paul, what's the best way to get hold of you? You've got obviously your website, Sierra Sports and Tours.
Yeah, we've got our website, www.sierrasportsandtours.com.
Yep.
And also we've got our Facebook page, Sierra Sports and Tours, which if you send a message through that, we'll respond off there.
Fantastic.
And I don't know, I guess we
via
could
email. You've got a
email.
Email. You've got a little contact us form on your website, so people can contact you via email.
I call Australia, not so much New Zealand daily, weekly New Zealand and Australia daily. So if anyone wants to discuss anything at all, 95% of our clients are still in Australia and New Zealand. So that's where our, networks are. So we have to call. So send me your number and I'll give you a call and we can chat about any options or any questions or doubts you have.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, look, thanks very much for everybody that attended tonight. It's been awesome, and I wanted to thank Paul for taking the time out to obviously talk about his tours and stuff. It's been great that we've been able to hook up with him in Spain. So what's the time over there, Paul?
Well, I'm lucky now because there's 10-hour difference. So it's 11 a.m. So it's
11 a.m.
You've looked after me
really well. Time to go for a ride.
Time to go for a ride. Fantastic. Anyway, look, I just wanted to thank everybody that did attend the webinar tonight. It's been fantastic, and hopefully you got some good value out of it. Certainly take the opportunity to subscribe to Paul's newsletter, and you might be inspired to get over there and ride some fantastic rides over in Europe, and it may even give you some ideas for some of the tours that you'd like to do in the future. So, one last question. We'll just slip it in. Julie's asked, how much is the bike hire? So it was really affordable.
Yeah, usually it's it sometimes depends if it's a 7-night through to a 9-night tour, but
Yep.
if you factor in around €300 for
Yep.
for sort of that 8 rides, that's typical price. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. All right. Well, look, thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. All the best, and certainly take care with your bike riding. Enjoy the ride, and we'll catch up with you. We'll have a few more of these webinars in the future, so we'll catch up with you soon. All right. So all the best, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.